Hello, folks. For those who are signing in early, thank you very much. As you know, our prior guest, I'm Joe Wesley, and who you don't know yet is our guest today.
Is Janine Bull?
Fair enough. We do this, folks, live. It's unrehearsed, it's unscripted. There's no pre programming. So any human element that sneaks in will be part of our actual challenge. And that's the fun of it, I think. For those who are signing in now, we're going to start again promptly at 8 o'clock. It's a half an hour. We do start a little bit early for the early birds who come in and share some maybe background dialogue. I do give a disclaimer. I try not to know anything about my guests prior to the session. It keeps it real, it keeps it alive. I know a little bit about Janine, and that's the challenge for me because I don't want to read into what I know of her. So if I stutter every now and then, so be it. We're now approaching the live session of it, so we'll do this a little bit differently. Hi, folks. Again, I'm Joe Wesley of Taking Your Hot Seat Challenge for Enhanced Success, and my guest today is
Janine Bolon. Lovely to see you guys. Coming from a mile high in Colorado.
fair enough. If she sounds polished, and I don't talk about business prior to who the person is, she is a broadcaster. And one guest who's going to watch this said, Joe, it should be a challenge for you, uh, a broadcaster, announcer of sorts, interview one. So she's particularly interested in this dialogue, and so am I. I'm blessed with people who come on who are bright, who are innovative, who are progressive. And it is really a challenge more to me. For those who are new to us, if you don't know how this is set up, I will engage the audience, my member, my guest, with the question very simply, so what's your favorite pastime? Now, Janine introduced the concept free time. Again, she's an innovator, so we'll see how that goes one way or the other. And then for the last 10 minutes of that 30-minute session, we will talk about how what she does is influenced by who she is and how it gives her program, her package, a distinctly unique value. And that may be redundant for you, the potential client, that there'll be something about her. Hopefully, she has not yet realized that's my role here, help you discover your secret sauce. But you might say, hey, I didn't know that about Janine. This is something I really want as a part of my money being spent, my hard-earned money for my growth. So we'll start now. What's your favorite pastime, Janine?
My favorite pastime, and the reason that I was teasing Joe earlier about, free time is because that's what I like to call it, is it's the time that I'm free to do whatever I want. And I enjoy that element of freedom in my life. And so that's why I call it my free time instead of a hobby or what have you. And there's a reason I live in Colorado for a very specific reason, and that's because I love to go hiking in the mountains. And it doesn't matter what season. This year, I'm going to learn how to snowshoe because I've always limited myself to 3 seasons of hiking. And now I want to learn how to snowshoe. And so I have a guide who's going to help me do that because one of the challenges is, you don't want to lose track of the trail.
I hear that.
and
Good
so
point.
and so I hire guides. I hire people to help me with my free time. But that's actually it. I have 4 children, and so I homeschooled them. And so one of the things was my life was very much dictated by school and schedules and that kind of thing. And I'm at a place now where I sent my last child off to college. So they're branching. They're like owls. I don't know if you
Mhm,
know this or not, but
mhm.
owls like to have their babies branch. They go out to branches and they come back to the nest and they go out to branches. And so it's called branching. It's a style or a phase of life. So my children are branching right now.
Interesting.
And
That,
as they branch, I'm going to also branch and I'm going to get out of the home nest for a bit and I'm going to go hike around the
Fair
mountains.
enough. And I'm going to ask a question. Now, I'm going to assume when you were 3 years of age, you didn't say, I want to cross country trek. That it didn't, did you get zapped by lightning? Or was this a thought of experience that says, I like this prospect of living and lifestyle? What took you on that path?
Well, it started with what did happen to me when I was younger, and that was I knew I wanted to go to Australia. I
Oh, how did you
knew.
know? How did you know that?
I just knew. I was studying this crazy continent that was also a country, and that intrigued me when I was 8 years old. And I
Hmm.
went, "Well, I wanna learn more." And the more I learned, the more I was like and I went into school and became an analytical biochemist. I worked for Big Pharma for 15 years. But one
Now,
of the things
I have to stop again. What was it about that? This lady, by the way, folks, this is a disclaimer. She does a lot of different things, and she'll hit you with 10 things in under 30 seconds. So I'm going to stop her every now and then. Biochemistry, that's not necessarily a common value. What was it about that that drew you to that industry?
I will be happy to do that, but I would like to answer your first question, which was about Australia. And
Okay.
and it was something that the more I studied Australia, and then when I went into the sciences and I was learning how to be a biochemist, it was like that just kept feeding and kept feeding and feeding the desire to go to Australia because uh, scientifically speaking, it has the weirdest biology of anything. It has plants that don't operate in the normal circles. So you would hear things like this throughout your entire college career. This is the way we put this plant or this animal into this taxonomy, blah, 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 except, and everybody would say in unison, Australia,
Mhm.
because Australia inevitably has the exception. And that's why it just fed me the entire time that I wanted to go to Australia. And
Okay.
so traveling was in my blood. Why did I pick biochemistry? Because it was an emerging field in the early 90s when I went to college from 1982 to 87, and it was an emerging field. Nobody wanted biochemists because they were these weird, crazy people that studied DNA. And what was that? You have to remember back in that time, a lot of people didn't understand it. So the chemistry department wanted to disown us. And the biology department was like, you guys are studying stuff that you can't even see. We don't even want to be with you, right? Because we study life at the cellular level, at the molecular level. And
Mhm.
so that was how we studied life. And so it was very crazy for a lot of people. So now, of course, it's a big thing. And I knew biochemistry had arrived in the public iconic when you have somebody like Sean Connery doing The Rock, and you have Nicolas Cage playing a biochemist. I was like, oh yeah, that's my peeps right there. Uh huh.
Fair enough. I hear that. Well, that's intriguing. So at some point you stopped doing biochemistry, yes?
Yes, I did. Hmm.
And what caused you to move on?
Something amazing happened. After 10 years of marriage, I had given up any thought that I was going to have children. And I became pregnant. I had a flu that wouldn't go away. And I
Mm.
realized I was pregnant. I was like, say what? And so I was like, I watched, you have to remember when I became pregnant, it was 1995. And you didn't have maternity leave yet. I was in a highly male dominated field. I was the only woman operating at the level I was. I was in automation and robotics. We were using RS-232 cables and a quick basic, but
Now,
nonetheless, I was
excuse me, could you translate RS-232s for those who aren't science inclined? What does that mean?
for anybody who's in tech, they'll start laughing at me. It's the 32-bit cabling that was the ribbon cables that you use to connect
Hmm.
your servers to your hardware because we had to build software to get machines to talk to each other. So you had to have some sort of computing knowledge because you didn't have the tech like we do today. And it
I
was the
see.
foundation of the internet.
Okay,
Basically, we called it the Ethernet, which
I
we
hear that.
kept it within the company.
So translate, folks. It was connecting the doohickey to the gizmo to make
That's
things work.
right, totally, and I only say the names so that my fellow geeks out there can go, "Oh, I know what she's talking about."
Fair enough. Well, we have that quite. We have a broader audience. We have to
Yes, you
also
do.
communicate. Fair
Yes,
enough.
you do.
I like that. So, if I understand correctly, I'm going to come back to your trekking across country again. Did you grow up in Colorado?
I did not. My father was in the military, he was in the Navy, and so I spent most of my early life outside of the United States. So my elementary school was done in Japan,
Hmm.
and so we were on a military base, so I was taught by English schools, that kind of thing, but we always, would spend, quite a bit of time with the, Japanese school system as well, so, um, that was my elementary school. Middle school was when I was in the Bahamas, and I was on a tiny island called Eleuthera in the Bahamas, and so that's where I learned very much about island life, and so middle school was beautiful for me,
Hmm.
there is being outside, being by the beach and the ocean all the time, and frequently, like I'd say 80% of the time, our classes were outside. So it was
Ooh.
very weird when I hit high school and came to the United States and everything was in a building that didn't have windows. So
Hmm.
that was very bizarre, yeah, for me to have that cultural experience.
Okay, so we're not quite yet in Colorado. How did that happen as part of your
Well, most
life?
of my adult life, I would spend my vacations, I would find a way to hit Colorado. I just was always drawn to Colorado the way I was drawn to Australia. And the more I would learn about Colorado, the more I realized I wanted to be there. And so I actually moved here in 2015.
And what was it about Colorado that grabbed your interest?
It was the incredible diversity of geography. I think there are 8 different geographical zones, but every time I say a number, I am corrected by somebody who knows more than I. And
Okay.
so I think the highest ever anyone's told me is 8 different geographies that are in the state. And so you only have to drive a couple of hours and you can be in a totally different place. And it's, nicer for me than the population density of California. So I
Hmm.
lived in California for quite some time because my dad being in the Navy, you will live in California
Right.
at some point. And, and the population density, wasn't as bad where I live, so that's why I like
Sure, thank you for that. Folks, you may see me looking down every now and then. What I do is I take notes
it.
because I have a mind like a sieve. So the things that I think are important for this quest of helping you discover your secret sauce, I'll make notation of it and I'll come back to that a little bit down the road. So you liked Colorado, you liked Australia, in two different countries. You liked biochemistry. I'm sort of giving you a litany of things that are happening here as I see it. You talked about your 4 children and what was the on the branches, the owl concept.
Yeah, they're like baby owls when they're learning to fly, they branch, yes.
Okay, fair enough. Biochemistry. First, let me backtrack. I happen to be a biology major also, so I'm asking more on a peer level question. What was it about biology? Uh, Now, rephrase that. For those who don't know the concept, was it more of a chemistry major into biology and more of a biology major into chemistry, or was it combined in like a pure relationship? For those who would take that type of, who aren't taking that, who are arts majors or literature majors, how does that work as a major concept?
It doesn't, which is why the biology department did not want us, and that's why the chemistry department did not want us. We
I
ended up
see.
being a part of the School of Agriculture.
Ooh.
Right? Because the School of Agriculture in University of Missouri at Columbia said, "We'll take them because we're developing food for the 21st century." Now, it's not a big thing, like GMOs are considered a bad thing now, especially in Colorado. But what
Mhm.
was interesting was they were trying to breed plants so that we could produce more food in less square acreage. It actually was an attempt to make sure that we could feed the world because we saw the population explosion that was happening and was predicted by actuaries. And so the School of Agriculture was like, we'll take the biochemists because we need help growing more food. And so I got very much involved in the Food for the 21st Century program during my collegiate career.
Right. Interesting. And I'm still not clear what it was about biochemistry, since it was a brand new concept, relatively speaking, that you said, I got to do this. I'm not quite sure how that path developed. Could you?
Yes. I went to an introductory lecture and they were like, biochemistry is the study of life at the cellular level.
Okay,
And then the guy said, "Forgive me, let me correct myself. It's the study of life at the molecular level."
fair
And
enough.
nobody was doing that I was aware of. Electron microscopy was out, of course, but it was still in its infancy. Watson and Crick, of course, had done their landmark work. It's one of the few papers that they're the only ones that were on it. They had won the Nobel Prize, but you have to remember this was an emerging field. It was very exciting to be a part of. It's kind of the way scientists or physicists talk about when they were studying new particles. People would literally run down the hallways talking about they found a new particle, they found a new particle. Because we didn't have the internet, okay, not in the way that it is now. So communications were by telephone and you're running up and down hallways talking to people. It was very interactive, very exciting time. So a lot of explosions were happening in science during this time. And then there was this thing that was being developed called the Human Genome Project that came out a few years after I got biochemistry. So again, it started off as an idea or a concept. And then as I walked my journey, more and more information would come to me and feed me. And I knew I was on the beginning of something pretty big. What was interesting to me was that I picked biochemistry because out of the 100 students who were in biochemistry, there were only two of us that were not going to be doctors,
Hmm. Interesting.
medical doctors. And so it became a program that if you were going to become a medical doctor or a veterinarian or a dentist, it was to get your baccalaureate in biochemistry because they knew medicine was moving to customized molecular level. Yeah.
Okay. I hear that. Now, folks, the general concept of our 30 minutes is the first part of it has to do with who is this person that I'm speaking with. The intent is, can I help you discover your secret? Not can I, I'm going to help you see a part of your secret sauce. And I'm going to do a slight commercial break because we're in a transition period now. At some point, I decide that I have enough information to now proceed on to her business and what she does. And the purpose of this, again, not just for her, but for anybody who has interest in learning an ingredient of their secret sauce, what's going to give you a distinct advantage over your competition that nobody's going to lay claim to? It's not what you do, it's who you are. And as a reminder, please remember, for those who want to share comments, we do audit the comments even alike afterwards. If you have a question, good or bad, please share that with us. We'd be happy to make a response back to that. And share with your friends, tell us about this program. And more importantly, if you have interest yourself in discovering an ingredient of your secret sauce, please contact myself. Once you learn more about our friend here, Janine Bolon, you will discover more about how you can contact her also as part of the concept here. I lost my screen, so let me get back to that. As I said, this is a live concept, and there we go. In the dialogue underneath the declaration of the event, you can contact her. There'll be contact information along with myself. So feel free to reach out to her or myself with any questions or comments. Now, this is important in part because in terms of Janine's business, I hope I got this right. You're a broadcaster and an influencer. Would you
I
consider
guess you
yourself?
could call me an influencer. That's kind of a young term. I'll let you know. I've been in broadcasting since 1982, and so
Mhm.
I never really called myself an influencer. But if you want to call me that, thank you, Joe. That's nice.
Sure. How did you get started in broadcasting?
It started with a radio show for my high school. It was Spotlight on DHS, and then I was asked to do
No,
voiceover
time
work.
out, time out, time out. How did you get started in radio broadcasting? You see, she does a lot of things, folks. I have to work very hard to get her into this. What is it? Let me ask this differently. What was it about you in hindsight that drew you to radio, to broadcasting, high school, elementary school, whenever it started? What was it? Hey, I like that. What was that grabbed you?
It was highly technological, and very few people knew about it or how it worked. I love studying how do things work.
Right?
And so when I went in to see if they would let me be a part of the Spotlight program, and they gave us a tour of the radio station, and I saw all the equipment that was necessary. You have to remember, I was in a very small town of about 1,700 people. And so the fact that this radio station had a reach and everyone in town listened to it because you didn't have Spotify and you most definitely didn't have satellite radio yet.
Hmm.
It was one of the far reaching stations. And so that was something that absolutely intrigued me. And so when we went into the booth and I was learning how to be, well, they don't call them disc jockeys anymore, but I was learning how to be a DJ. I was learning how not only to pop in cassettes, but also the uh, uh, vinyl, the old vinyl.
Right?
And as I learned how to use the reel to reel tapes, which was what most radio stations used at that time, it was a lot of fun. And then they started teaching me how to do troubleshooting. And so I've always been involved in technology in some form or another.
Fair enough. Now, what's intriguing here, and again, we talk about notes. I may not be the best organized guy, so I have notes all over the place, written sideways and upside down. But with that said, I see a pattern. I'd like to share it with you to get your feedback on that. I'm
Well,
going to start.
there's one forgive me, there's one
Go ahead.
element of my personality that is my secret sauce,
Go
and
ahead.
that is something we haven't even touched on. In my opinion, we've only touched on, the segment of my life that moved me into my career path, but then there was
Fair.
the spiritual side of me that was also moving at the same time, and that was when
Please
I was
share.
struck by lightning. And when I got struck by lightning and was adopted by Native American communities, and I have a very strong mystical side as well. And
Yeah.
so that's why I write in 4 different demographics as an author. So that's one of the things I wanted to share with you is the side that you are seeing is the more public side, the to be all fairness to the secret sauce and your program, because I love your concept, I love what you do, and I really want to learn what you have to share with me on this. I want to make sure you get the whole entity and not just the front face. I would like you to see the dark side of the moon, which is also the mystical side, the spiritual side.
I hear that, and I wouldn't call that dark side. I was gonna say, if we work backwards, I'm gonna take this in a different formula. You add another add-on. To put it mildly, and this is in sincere complimentary manner, you are a take charge person. You are, and I'm sure that's an understatement as I'm saying it. And you're very comfortable with it. And I'm going to work backwards again and then give the backstory to it. One of the notes I made, people talk about the concept eye candy, where something draws them. Ooh, it could be clothing, it could be a sports car, it could be a trip of a vacation, and just emotionally they draw into it. And that could very well be a motivating factor for them in a very significant manner. But I have another phrase I've never used before, and I call it mental chemistry, that Janine has a strong dose of that also. And I think they're synonymous, but eye candy is pure emotional as I see it. That's my definition. And mental candy, I'm defining this as I'm saying this, is the left brain side. And usually my experience has been mental chemistry is not nearly as compelling as eye candy. However, this is the exception. This lady, Janine Bolon, I think her mental chemistry is just as compelling as her eye candy phenomena. And everything besides taking charge, not but to the candy factor. When I go back to the story of going into the radio program back in school, that it was, many people say, oh, that's just too much, that I can't be bothered by that. She says, wow, look at this stuff. Wow, I got to learn this for the pure joy of it. And I don't know if you have, and she talks about alluded to challenges. This is only a 30-minute session, so we can't go beyond the 30 minutes to keep ourselves true. But having said that, I clearly get the image where a challenge would turn off a lot of people, preventing them from moving ahead. For her, it's mental candy. And the mental candy, eye candy, I think it's synonymous. There is no dichotomy on that concept. So she talks about liking biochemistry when it was not popular. She talks about liking Australia and Colorado because of the complexity of it, not because, oh, they have great beaches, I love the sunshine, I surf, mountain climbing, whatever it may be. You know, it's the complexity, it's the mental candy that draws her and she absorbs into, and the detailed focus that comes along with it, the novelty concept of it, being one of 2 students in a class that's basically pre-medicine criteria. She's doing it for the joy, for the challenge of it. And these are the things that I see tying together this lady, Janine Bolon. And I have to refer to my notes again. So the issue, and I'm going to rephrase it, I'm going to stick my neck out even more so in this. Maybe the crazier it is, the more the draw it is to her, the more novel it is. I have a concept there also. I wrote down never too much. And I teased her once when I spoke with her recently that I'm convinced that she has 4 or 5 cyborgs. Have you ever watched Star Trek, I guess, or I forget which one it is, when they go into the receptacle and they click back in place and they reload up again. So when one battery cyborg wears down, she has another cyborg coming out. So this is the first time I've ever used my prior knowledge as part of my dialogue. But it ties together so well, I just had to say it. And why are these things important? Well, because what is it you do again currently? I don't know if I quite asked you that. I wrote down broadcaster and influencer, but what's your desire, what's your purpose, what's your goal in your current program?
To help authors make money with their books. So it's Authorpreneurs HQ.
Okay. And that's a good, and I didn't write that down. Sorry for that. The concept being that anybody can say what they do. I want to help somebody. And if they've got integrity. They actually mean it, as opposed to I simply want your money. Having said that, what impresses me here is that there are a lot of people now advocating providing the ability to write books. And I'm sure many people are very good at it. Others you don't know. But as a poor consumer, it's almost like an eeny, meeny, mighty, mo. How do I make a decision? But what I see in Janine, what I've discovered in Janine, is that here's a woman who the novelty factor draws her, that she won't be likely a repetition of what's already out there, that her approach will be something uniquely different of value to you. She takes the time, she's detail focused. So I have no doubt she'll take the time to learn who you are, the person, as opposed to putting something off the shelf or slots. Okay, here's what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. I think you can feel free. Now, by the way, Janine, if I'm too far off track, let me know. I think you can feel rest assured, this is a lady who have an innovative approach to how to present you, your presence, your value to the world around you, because that's who she is. And the more complex you may be, and we are in our own manner complex, but I think many people, my experience has been, will just skim over the surface. And I don't think Janine is ever satisfied with that concept. The homeschooling for her kids, she is completely involved in the things she does, and she does them well enough that she moves always on to a higher level. Am I far off the track on that? Or what are your thoughts about what I've said?
My thoughts on what you've said is very perceptive.
Okay, well, thank you. So the value to the audience member who is looking, oh, why do you feel it's important to put books out? Let me ask you that. You do it, I'm sure, more than a hobby. Why do you see value to your client base that they would want to have a book out there about themselves or what they do?
I want them to put a book out because it will speak for them when they're not present.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that short sentence says a lot more in complexity value than anything we've done so far here. So, but having said that, now it's intuitive to me. I've heard her say it before, but in all fairness to the world around me, I've heard that before. But here's a lady as I've discovered more about her secret sauce. And this is just an ingredient. In 30 minutes, we're not going to share one's whole lifestyle and true value. But having said that, if anybody has an inclination to have themselves presented to the world around them when they are not physically there. What do they talk about? The multiplier effect. The more you spread out, the more people who you make contact with. There's only one of me and one of you, but your books can be multiple images. I used the earlier example of cyborgs. Well, you've developed your own literal cyborgs to represent who you are through books. Yes, that's a fair statement.
Yes, I have.
Fair enough. I'm not sure what grabs me the most, the short answers or the long answers. But anyway, that being
You know
said,
that from physics. Come on, Dr. Joe. You know that from physics. E equals MC squared.
I agree that.
The
But
shortest equation ever, and yet
right,
the most powerful.
fair enough. And for those who aren't science focused, there's an Einstein theory, and they talk about the speed of light as a reference point. And there's a reference that so much mass, so much speed, and the relationship between the two and velocity. And I'm not the chemistry side of this, has been a while back, but what she's alluded to the fact that the more presence you have, the more meaningful that presence might be, the more multiplier value it has to you, because there's only so many hours in the day. But if you have, I'm back to the kids in the branch now, the owls in the branch. The more branches you have and owls out representing variations of who you are, the better the exposure, the greater the sense people have to learn about you, engage with you. Is that a fair concept and your purpose and what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay. That's the short answer again. I'm sitting back for a litany of dialogue here. That being said, we'll go back to commercial break again, folks. Please remember, if you have comments, good, bad, or indifferent, please share that back. Please share with your friends, associates. For those who would like to discover a part of their secret sauce, again, somebody asked me, what's the cost for this? And I say 30 minutes of your time. No rehearsal, no script, simply follow my lead. Please reach out to myself. For those who see value, who've been toying with the idea of maybe I could or should or might write a book, but geez, I want to waste my money. Who's a good person? In my world, Janine Bolon is a go-to persona to make that happen well for you. And so as we're closing out, is there anything like you have people take home with themselves, Janine?
Yes, I want to remind everybody to breathe. We don't do enough deep breathing. There's a lot happening in our world. There's a lot that is putting pressure on you. And one of the ways to get back to sanity is through your creativity. Doesn't have to be through writing, doesn't have to be through journaling. It can be just you working out in your garage on some project that you enjoy, or it can be something as simple as just reorganizing a space that you enjoy being in. The thing is to relax and breathe. And it's very difficult to do in this world because it seems to be wanting us to be on 24/7, 365. Human beings were not designed for that. We're not machines. And so please remember your humanity by being kind to yourself.
Okay, nicely said. And I think that's always end on an upbeat note. Thank you very much for that response. Thanks for those who shared this journey with us. Thank you, Janine, for being a part of our guest. And thank you, audience. Please share your comments, thoughts, and sharing with each other. Take care. And I'm looking up now the end.